recording. All right, so we're here to listen to Ed Burle. He's a poet who's been published locally. He's a community leader. He's the reason we're all here, because Red Wheelbarrow was his and Jacques' brainchild, and he's gathered us and helped us propel forward behind the scenes. I believe he's a master of the short poem. I think he can do so much with so few words, and it's something I really, really admire about his poetry. He's always got a kind word for others and their poems, and I think we are very lucky to know him and to get to hear his work tonight. So please take it away, Ed.
Thank you, Melissa. Thanks everyone for coming tonight, for taking the time to be here. So this reading is going to be identical to the reading that I was going to do in December. Some new things, some old things. And the first one is called Your Street. I will always remember the street and its sidewalk, where once we talked, and which will outlast all words, all histories, now consigned as before to the ruins of memory. Tonight in the street, as years before, a row of parked cars, a light in your window with the curtains shut that faces the street that divides on either side, a row of white houses beneath the silence of the sky. This is called Dream. I dreamed I was dancing with someone who could have been you. I dreamed we moved through the circles of my longing, if such longing was indeed for you. I dreamed we danced gently, past hesitation, that you followed where I led, your smile and your eyes leading me in a dance too. I dreamed I was dancing with someone, though I cannot dance, though when it comes to dancing, it seems wisest to put up a sign saying, I'm through. I dreamed I was dancing with someone. My mind leads me back to my chance encounter with you. I have some short pieces. At the Wimpy in Pinelands. At the Wimpy in Pinelands, the hamburger man and the lipstick lady digest their murmured conversation. She paces the room. She paces the room, waits for her lover. In the mirror, a dream-colored goldfish circles the fishbowl. She tries. She tries, but finds no sweetness in her man or in herself, the beekeeper's wife. Laundromat. The hot clothes in the dryer, embrace and let go. He can't remember when it was. They were still together. This is called hate speech. He was my age, 11 or 12, I guess. Listened to cassettes by Eddie Grant and Bob Marley, which he lent to me. But one afternoon, out of the blue, he spewed and barked racial insults at passers-by, strangers to him, from the window of my family's old accommodating, VW Combi. This is called Motorist. He drives aggressively, maintains a bumper-to-bumper following distance, overtakes on solid lines. The green lettering on the side of his white van reads pest control. The most likely explanation for his eye on the road inclination is to be found in a word that's a combination of a synonym for donkey and something large that you'll find in Kimberley. Arranging the deck chairs. Aboard the sinking ship, the piano is playing a funeral march. An army of violins, all out of tune, is taking prisoners on deck. Only the cello murmurs its dissent, while the drums thunder and crash down the stairs to where the ship's engineer lies motionless under the swaying chandeliers, pinned to the floorboards by such strange music. The chief navigator, having found his bearings in the linen room, is swinging champagne with a chambermaid. The composer, in fitful sleep, is still composing his concerto for 99 penguins. Loudspeakers on the beach repeat that the sun is shining. The audience, as ever, goes on rearranging the deck chairs, while complimentary tickets are being distributed by the wind to the choir of lost fish, who will be the only ones to attend the next beneath the waves. Notes from a room. The dark blue line of sea's horizon divides the window into sky and sea. Sunlight finds the window's frame, lightens the blue of pale blue bed and curtains. Glimpsed in the mirror, someone from whom you cannot hide. Tonight, you will dream in the waves of the rumpled sea of the bed. Bed, pillow, and body, a ship for minds tenacious exploration. Rooms within worlds, worlds within rooms that someday will be gone. Next one is called He Wakes. He wakes to the sight of a vast plain of water, a curved blue horizon. He wakes to a presence sustaining itself, the lives within its salt-filled embrace. He wakes to the resilience of the unsleeping sea. He wakes to the silent river of his blood, to a directive from his bladder. He wakes to the sound of the cat devouring her breakfast in the kitchen. He wakes not to the alarm on his phone, to time's incessant ticking. He wakes to the day's tasks. He wakes to the heart's endless lessons, to traps and he wakes and not stuck that desire and he again lie behind the veil. He wakes again, the only place which he
Ed, you seem to have frozen. I don't know if it's just me. Let's see, we'll give him a second to get back in here. Hopefully his internet isn't giving problems.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to do the end of Notes from a Room again.
I'm not sure when I'm not sure when it kicked me out. Melissa?
I think I heard the end of that one, the room one. So maybe start the
Okay.
next one.
Okay, thanks, Jacques.
Yeah, just
Okay. Woman on a bicycle. The wind lifts her fringe and her spirits. She rides where the feeling takes her. A blue bicycle and some books. A blue bicycle and some books. The boys escape from the cul-de-sac of suburbia. All used up, nothing left. All used up, nothing left to give or say. His song of perpetual motion on the way to nowhere. Driving home. Driving home. Duval Drive at night. The moment replete with the lights of the harbor, glimpsed through soft rain, with hypnotic piano chords that pulse and weave through the speakers. Tonight, such music, composed and performed on another continent, years before you were born, has again found you. Tonight, you are one more connecting thread, one more tributary in this music's diffuse and ongoing journey. Kite flyer. A kite, like a pterosaur, soars through the air above him, dives and climbs against its runway of clouds, curves and ascends at speed, carving out spaces in the sky that never existed till now. He is alone on a stretch of beach strewn with pebbles and shells, scraps of bleached litter. Behind him, the water's grey, translucent sheen, the surfers like seals in their wetsuits, slicing the waves. He leans back, pulls on the strings. The kite plunges downwards, hugging the wind as it circles, knifes down low over the sand, hangs suspended where the wind goes dead. A gentle tilt sends it tearing back into its realm of sky. Over and over, he flies this kite. He flies it this moment for the children that stare, for the old woman and her dog that pass behind him along the shoreline. He flies it this moment for all that never took flight in himself, for all that did, for the happiness inside him today that lives. This is called Seascapes. Dark islands drift across the sea's sunlit scales. Cloud shadows. Wind stirs, conjuring hidden white horses. Sounding the one pure music of itself. In cadence after cadence, the ocean composes an unbroken song. Although the sea has no need for him, the pulse of the tides still enters his room, reverberates through his being. Keeping a constant horizon, the sea gathers itself to itself. He attempts to regain his fleeting equilibrium. Training ground. Walking, pausing, half jogging up corridor ravine. Or on some days, running in the early morning dark, street lamps and the breathing sea, his companions, as he follows a route he's devised up through the roads of a suburb. It is here that he finds what helps him survive. It is here that he starts over, a beginner once more, in the training ground for the mind. This is called Not Yet. Words on scraps of paper, song lyrics, verse from anthologies, ideas and quotes, definitions of words, and paragraphs from books, all carried in the pockets of his high school shirts. The words are seeds, some of them are cinders. The words are magnets, they are mantras. The words are keyholes, they are side streets to all that lies hidden. The words are puzzle pieces, they are mirrors, they are slippery, they are tributaries and rivers. Words on scraps of paper, carried in the pockets of his high school shirts, stacked against his chest like dreams. Words he is not yet able to weave into the music of a poem or a story that is his. This is called 5 Short Poems, and I'll just pause in between each of the sections. Of what use then these maps and word pegs, tracings and distillations of inner geographies? These jottings and word dreams, sometimes the only ritual I know to uncover new ground, to stop being closer to bone than breath. Walking a thin line between confession and invention, the poet. Neighing loudly about the tasteless choice of cover for their collective book of poems, a stable of poets. This poem is a footprint-shaped hollow within stone, filled with rain. For the shades. It's in 7 sections. I'll just pause in between the sections. For the shades. On rain-soaked days, my thoughts are with the dead, those loved no longer here, beyond this place, where an ocean shifts and swells and steers its course inexorably towards the land. Somewhere beyond the window's glass, a dripping sound which stops and starts, the clack and clatter of a crane clearing rubble. But on this rain-cloaked day, my mind drifts towards the dead. On rainy days, my mind strays towards the dead, the many dead and loved beyond this place, where birds converse as birds will do, and the house is folded into its silence, like a sleeping bird into itself. Word offerings for those I've loved, for those no longer here, are but a broken cup, thanks that can never reach them or say enough. Rain scented with the promise of earth's renewal, rain which draws a veil around the sorrow of the world. On rainful days, my mind circles the names of those no longer in this place, of strife, decay, and beauty, of blood and bone and words. For the days that still remain, I invite the dead to stay for as long as they see fit within this house of memories, this house that keeps receding, dissolving in the rain. More notes from a forest. Slanted shafts of sunlight illuminate tree roots and pine needles on the path. Shadows lengthen. Light catches the granules of sand falling through the hourglass, emptying in his mind. The endless merry-go-round of fight, flight, or desire. Squirrels chasing one another along the pathways they create between the branches of trees. Autumn falling everywhere in tongues of red and orange, amber and yellow. His journey too will end in severance, in letting go. Some more notes, this time from a run. Notes from a run. Beneath the midday sun, his cool, liquid shadow strides beside him on the path. His breath, his footfalls, the only sound, until he nears the mountain stream. The fanned-out orange, backlit by the sun, of the spread wings of two red-winged starlings, pulsing by in tandem. Their spontaneous flight, their lightness against an impossibly light blue sky is his also. Three short, untitled pieces. Pulse, flit, turn, pause. He's eye to eye, with a cape, white eye. Dark glint of beak, eyes, and feathers as he veers, maneuvers, flip-flaps away, startled crow. The call of an owl. How deep the well of night. This is called sinuous. A sinuous reed, a lithe black current, darts and coils and works and winds its way up into a tree, boomslang. Next one is called lynx. Our encounter was fortuitous, unexpected. Your gaze briefly met mine and told you all you needed to know. You went your way as I continued jogging along a man-made path. May there always be a hunter such as you, nosing the wind, senses attuned to earth and sky, between setting sun and rising moon, between mountain crags and the repeating waves far below. And some more short untitled pieces. A green guard stirs, rears his head through the ferns, praying mantis. Cicadas singe the air, fever pitch of violin song. As I pass, they synchronize, a moment's pause, then play on. Slug, traversing a hillside path. You're minus the twirl, the regal appendage of shell, but deliberate and steady. A small bristling wave repeats itself across concrete. Caterpillar, caterpillar. On patterned wings, a cosmos in miniature floats up before me, butterfly. Notes from the Kruger Park. We are the sky, the light that never repeats itself the same way twice. We are the insects swallowed in mid-air by swooping bats, the bat hawk that feeds on the bats. We are the ones who sometimes discover in the wilderness or in the mirror of a lake deep within some lost voice that is ours. Notes from the Cederberg. Shadows climb these shape-shifting mountains, changing with the changing light. This harsh and unforgiving light, the slow attrition of sheer and splintered stone, of baked and cooling earth, purifies my sight, moves me closer to what it is I mean to say. Above, the valley's dark, ripening clusters of stars, dripping light. We're getting close to the end. On his walks. On today's walk through a suburb, he avoids, where possible, the main roads, cultivates within himself alleyways of serenity and surprise. Sometimes on his walks, lines stir and flicker, leap from the ground of his mind like flames. In the park that seeks into the forest, dogs off their leashes, marking their territories, decoding the scent-laden air. These days he walks through a seemingly unending forest of uncertainty. The forest ripples with birdsong. What inner music leads him onwards? And the last two. Visit. In my dream, you visit. Show me routes for the most advisable ascent up a strangely shaped mountain. You are interpreting formations of cloud, the ebb and flow of wind, the position of the sun. You are in your element, doing what you always did when you were alive, sifting internal and external weather and geographies whilst running or walking. By simply showing up, you remind me that I need to find a way to start running again, to become a better reader of my life's terrain. Ahead of me on the path, my father, running further into mountains, into an old rhythm, into a silence which sustains him. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Does everyone want to unmute to clap for Ed? Brilliant.
Well done, Ed.
Thank you. It was wonderful. I'm glad we got the second half uninterrupted. And I think you did brilliantly. Many lines that stood out that I was like, "Ooh, I like that." Ooh, ooh.
Thanks, Vincent. Yeah.
Does
Thank you.
anybody have a question they want to start us off with for Ed? You're welcome to raise your hand or wave. Troyden.
I'm going to unmute my, okay. Ed, I'm just wondering, like, if you could name like 3 or so poets who you find take a lot of inspiration from, because, you know, your work is so unique. And I'm just wondering, like, what goes into that mix?
Okay. Thanks, Troyden, for saying that. I think it really depends on where I am with my reading, but it could be, I read a lot of South African poetry, a lot of great poets there. Neruda, let's say, Kavafi. These are, of course, not South African poets, but yeah. Yeah, it's a real mix of things. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
well done tonight, Ed.
Thank you. Margaret Atwood is, you know, there's so many. It's just, yeah. Thank you.
I put you on the spot there, but yeah, it's just interesting. Yeah, I've wondered that for a while. Yeah.
Okay. I'll send you a list if you're really curious.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, you don't have to, but if you find the time.
That's good.
Thanks, Troyden. That's a great starting question. Then we've got a hand up from Georgia. And Jacques, I see your hand, but since you're always first, I'll leave you for not first.
Hey, Ed.
Hey, Georgia. So glad
Hi,
you.
everyone. Oh, it's what a treat. And it's the first time it's wonderful. It's the first time I've heard you read so many poems, of yours. And it just, first of all, I absolutely adore your nod to insects and birds and animals. I love writing for them as well. And the way you paint these pictures, it's such a visual gift. It's the words it's just so you can smell it. I just feel I'm just right there, and I just know them, and I feel them, and I'm with you in that place. It's magical, absolutely magical. And I guess, there could maybe possibly two questions more. That was more of a thank you, just absolutely wonderful. You mentioned word dreams, and they feel very dreamlike and very meditative, a lot of them. And especially you're talking about pathways and what you see and your experiences. It does feel like a meditation. And I think the question is about this visual part. Do you find yourself being led by a picture and then looking to fill that with the words that you find as you create a poem? Or is that a conscious thing of yours? Does it come, are you led by a visual first when you're thinking or meditating about an experience?
It's a great question, and I don't know the answer. I know I'm very visually, I'm definitely keyed into things visually, but I do write from a feeling place as well. So I like things.
Didn't mean to dump you in it there, Ed. No, it's curious because it's so. I guess I just really relate to how your images and words come together. There's something in there that's just so inspiring to me because of some of the places where I'm working at the moment with my own words. And it's very interesting. I'm asking myself these questions, sort of looking for that. But I guess it is an almost impossible thing to answer because who knows where they come from when they come. But I just wondered.
I appreciate the question, and I guess if some of the immediacy that I would have felt or registered, if that comes through, then that's actually, like you said, you feel like you're right there with those insects and things. So that
absolutely wonderful.
Sounds good. Yeah.
I love the short, as Melissa said in the beginning, your short poems and your humor and how the layers of humor and visual and this feeling, this meditative quality overlap. It's wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there another question? What was?
Well, I sort of lost the plot because I realized that I'd asked you such a difficult question. The first question was so difficult. No, it was more, I guess, had you said, yes, one leads from another, I would have asked more about the starting point. But I think you've answered it by what you've said already. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're having some good questions. Then let's have a question from Jacques.
So that was a fantastic reading. I was very moved by it, as always. What struck me is that your poems are not about poetry. They're about things. They're about people and places and creatures. But I was very struck by these images tonight, by these images that you have of the poet, someone who walks a labyrinth, someone who holds a broken cup, someone who flies a kite, who defies gravity. I guess my question has to do with that line where you look into the difficult landscape and you say it purifies my sight. and I get that you mean inner seeing.
Yes. Yeah.
And somehow, when I think of your poems, I often think of that line first. So I wondered if you wanted to say something about that. What that means for you, what it is that, what it would mean to have a more purified sight or insight, because it's a very striking image and a difficult image. You know, it's not, you're not having an easy time looking into that place.
Jacques, your insights are lovely. They are indeed, and that's a tricky question, but I think maybe the that line is just when you're in that environment, maybe it sort of ups the ante, it ups your game. You're forced to be exacting with language in a way, because you're in this place which is merciless in a way. It's beautiful, but it's speaking to truth telling, I guess, something like that. I don't know if that.
Yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful foil for that, the earlier one about the kite flyer. That's also a heroic thing, because you're defying gravity. You're doing it for yourself, but you're also doing it for all these other people somehow.
Okay.
Wanting to anyway.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah.
I mean, that's the best I can answer that. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jacques. Then we've got a hand up from Patricia.
Yes, thank you, Ed. That was so wonderful. And this wasn't what I meant to say, but picking up on what other people have said, I also love the way that the intensely focused image then leads to the thought and the idea. I mean, since it's the Red Wheelbarrow and Carlos Williams, it's a brilliant example of ideas but in things, because you focus so brilliantly on the thing and then the idea emerges. But that wasn't really what I wanted to say. I wanted to say that for me, there was a huge pervasive influence of the rhythm of walking and running.
Oh, okay.
Goes right through from beginning to end. Do you compose poems walking and running?
Well, I haven't been able to run for 3 years, but I do still walk a lot, and anything that, I guess, because I believe that those of us who are as obsessed as many of us are here with words, we're always writing poems in the backs of our minds, and so anything that allows something to slip in from the side or from wherever it slips in, and that's often running or walking is often where things like this happen for me. So I can write part of a poem in my head sometimes in this situation, and it's that thing of being paradoxically out of your mind. So yeah, nothing. Thank you for the question and the things you said at the beginning. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
I'm wondering, to follow on from that, and also Jacques' comment about you writing very like observational kind of poems. Is this something that has come naturally to you? So I think of being a poet as being someone who's kind of paying attention to the world. And your poems do that. You're focusing on little details, the person sitting in the wimpy or the little plant or animal or whatever. So is being someone who's paying attention to the world around you, or observing and looking for things that you could write about, something that you've always done, or have you trained yourself to do that?
That's a great question. And I don't know. certainly paying attention is a big, definitely paying attention is maybe this desire to get to the heart of something, to get to the have I always done this? I suppose yes. So yeah, I think the writing has been a feature of my life because it's allowed me to say things I couldn't otherwise say, and the inexpressible, the things that you can't get to in the everyday, but I'm not sure now how that relates to the observational.
Thank you. That answers it.
Thank you.
Jeff, I see you unmuted. Did you have a question?
Oh, yes, thank you. Ed, it was great. On my particular Zoom this time, I was able to hear a great deal of your presentation. And I was thinking as I listened that there are certain qualities which, and maybe you don't agree with them, so I'll just mention them. There's earnestness, there's vision, there's a kind of guarded pace in the way in which you deliver your poems, and there's a concern with language, limpid language, pared down language. So if I have to put all this into a question, perhaps two questions. Do you think these descriptive elements are making some sense from your own point of view of what you're trying to do? And let's leave it at that for a moment.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Those are very useful and very insightful ideas. I hope they move beyond, at least some of them move beyond the descriptive to areas which are more, something more than a visually precise picture.
Yes. Yeah, I think what perhaps is a better word for it, what I meant by vision was an imaginative insight, a kind of a, in the Blakean sense, a sort of looking into the other side of the brute reality. I mean, you changed Pinelands for me. I won't walk through this suburb again in quite the same way as I have been, even in the Howard Centre.
Okay.
Oh, no, thank you very much. And it was all serendipitous because you got frozen at one point in my Zoom, and somehow the gesture that you were compelled to adopt for a little while seemed to kind of meld with some of the experience that you were offering.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah.
I mean, if I can just say, I think it's descriptive. It doesn't just refer to an outer reality. You describe outer worlds and you describe inner worlds, and you make connections between the two. You blur the boundaries between the two. So, you look at something on the outside and somehow it relates to you, but you're not quite sure how. So descriptive is, it doesn't mean just taking note in the way that, a photographer would. It's also inward looking.
I think the inner world is terribly important for you, more than in many poets. Yeah.
This is very useful feedback, and I'm very grateful for it. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Is there anyone else who's got a comment or question for Ed? You're welcome to unmute yourself if you want.
Just a comment. I just really appreciate the how beautifully economical your poems are in terms of, you know, how many words you use in that. You just kind of get straight to the point, and you know, it's you're like a master of miniaturization.
Well,
It's
thank you.
really well done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Put that in your bio, master of visualization.
Hi, Ed.
Hi,
It was
Stuart.
a wonderful reading, and limpid is a very good word to describe it. And I just wanted to say I especially loved the squirrels chasing each other along the pathways that they make. I thought that was a lovely way to describe the life above us. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for being here.
As we talk about the short or the conciseness of your work, do you start with longer stuff and edit down, or do you find you write as these more snippet kind of pieces as a natural inclination?
I never used to write these short pieces. I was more driven by narrative, like something like The Kite Flyer, or that somehow seemed quite easy to do at one stage, and or easier to do than anything like writing a short piece. And then I think, well, this is the story that I tell myself, and I'm telling you now. When my daughter was born, I had a lot less time to sort of, and it felt like, you know, I only had time for these isolated bursts of things. And yeah, and then the challenge of doing that well, I became obsessed with that. And sometimes I do whittle longer things down into one short thing, because I find I have a tendency to be verbose, and in my writing I can sometimes be very concise with a poem. So yeah, it just depends. Sometimes the image is enough. But sometimes the story or the narrative is possibly worth exploring, and then it's got elements of both. I don't know if that. Yeah.
No, that's a brilliant answer. Thank you.
Great question. Yeah.
I think it's sometimes like that thing Mark Twain said, that I wanted to write you a long letter, but I didn't have to. I wanted to write you a short letter, but I didn't have the time, so I wrote you a long letter instead. You actually, maybe as you write, you pare it down to essentials. Yeah.
Yeah, I find for me the poems, the process is often like something underwater. I've said this before, I think, to you perhaps, but sometimes it takes time for things to emerge more clearly. So yeah, just sometimes one has to be really patient. At least I have to be patient. I can't do your 30 minutes and I've written a poem, you know, so that sort of thing, which is
maybe you're doing almost the editing in your head before you've actually written, and that's why you end up with this really concise thing. But it's so well thought out by the time it gets out on the page. Who knows? Take the time. We've also got a hand from Pelelani.
Hi, Palani.
Hi, Ed, how are you? Fine. Good evening, everyone.
And you? Yeah.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. Unfortunately, I kept on cutting here, but I was able actually to capture the majority of your poems. Thank you very much for sharing. Yeah, because just joining into, you know, you call these bus, these short poems. You know, I always say that it takes bravery, because it takes bravery to trust your reader, you know, as a poet, you know. So there's one thing that I would always call a dark matter in a poem, because sometimes the line is what, or is where the light bounces on, but there's this dark matter where the light just goes through, you know.
Okay.
You can't see this thing, but it holds the entire poem. It holds this light. So it takes bravery to trust the reader that they are aware of the dark matter in your poem. They will be able to sense it in a way, you know. Yeah. So
thank you. No,
yeah. You take bravery and trust in that. You know.
Thank you.
Sometimes words are just words will reflect, but there's something that is holding the poem. It's invisible hollow, you know.
I hear you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Pelani. It's like the unsaid, right? It's the unsaid in the poem, or the thing behind the poem, if you like. Yeah. Which each reader will, okay. Thank you.
And Paul's also got a hand up now.
Thanks.
Paul.
Yo. Listen, there've been a number of comments about your talent for the short poem, for the sort of the haiku consciousness. I think that you've got an eye for narrative as well, and that particular poem of yours, the deck chairs poem, the rearranging deck chairs, the instant thought in my mind, obviously, is Bob Dylan and Tempest, and Dylan's long narrative about the sinking of the Titanic. So I felt that there was the presence of Tempest in that piece. I mean, obviously yours is a very condensed version because Dylan's song is about 15 minutes long, but it's basically telling the story, and you do it in a very condensed way, but you've got an eye certainly for the story, and I think that's underemphasized in people's reception of your poetry. Certainly when I'm reading it, I'm seeing that capacity and that talent for telling a story, not only in a minute sense, but in a larger sense of an unfolding, not only of events and happenings, but also of the consciousness that runs through those. So thanks for a wonderful selection. Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. That's a lot to sort of unpack. Wow, I mean, Bob Dylan is he's I'm no Bob Dylan, so you know.
Yeah, you do. Yeah.
No, but I guess that one tells a story with images in a way as well. That particular poem, that arranging the deck chairs. But
and there's certain resonances. The deck chairs themselves, the swinging chandelier. I mean, you've got a swaying chandelier in yours. The orchestra. Yeah.
Paul, can I just point out that when did he write that?
I think it was the 1990s. Hang on. No, it was later than that. I'll tell you when it was. It was about 2010 or so, Jacques. You'll probably be able to.
Tempest 2012.
So
about
2010.
All right.
I asked because I can safely say that it was written before that date. so everything is just a beautiful coincidence.
Okay, well, Dylan took it from you then, because the chandeliers are there, the orchestra's there in the Dylan, so he found you.
Paul, thank you.
Cool.
Jeff's got another comment.
Yes, I must say, I earlier on, Ed, you said that you'd sort of been working with narrative and then you'd kind of moved perhaps beyond narrative or not something. I think Paul's got an important point that maybe what we see in some of your poems is a new kind of super condensed narrative, but there's that sequential thing as well that is so important when one is trying to interpret what is being said, you know, and maybe narrative is either direct or encapsulated or enclosed is a kind of pervasive element in poetry, and your even your very short poems invite one to in a sense that truncated narrative. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Thank you.
Right. Are there any other comments or questions before we wrap up this part of the evening? Looks like not. It's been a very interesting Q&A. Thank you everyone for participating. And thank you, Ed, for all your answers. And for sharing your poems with us. It's been a real treat. I think, yeah, we're not used to getting to hear a whole range of your work, and this has really been wonderful. I'm glad you were able to do this for us.
Yeah, it was a treat. Thank you. I was nervous, but and it's a challenge to read out loud, but I'm glad. Yeah.
You did it.